Welcome to Destination Linux, your scrappy Firefly class ship soaring through the verse of open source tech. I'm your captain this week, Jill, a Linux enthusiast and open source historian, steering the crew with expertise in every Linux subject to keep our ship shiny and free. Out here in the black, we're fighting the good fight for open source freedom. Ryan, our resident hardware security geek, is our Zoe-like ship mechanic, tough as nails, locking down systems and hacking through any alliance-level threats with precision. Michael, our software geek and slick marketer, is our Wash, master of code navigation and always ready to pull a crazy software stunt or marketing gambit that leaves us all gobsmacked. This week, we're diving into VirtualBox, pulling a hero's run to save the day like a daring reaver chase escape. We'll unpack Ubuntu's sudo upgrade with Rust, smooth as a smuggler's cargo run and built to last. Plus, Michael's cooking up something wild. Could be a software hack or a marketing caper, and we aiming to find out. So buckle up, sync your repos, and keep flying with us. In the verse of open source, the codes are freedom, and proprietary alliances can't clip our wings. This is Destination Linux.
Nice. This week, our feedback comes from Cecil, who says, on episode 418, that joke about the Siberian word for root is Dopaluka, and Dopaluka means higher than the kernel level, is the best laugh that I've had while listening to this show. Nice one. That was pretty good. I don't remember when I looked it up, and I don't remember what language had an actual translation for it, but I found another one just based on this, prepping for the show. And it turns out that in Indonesian, Dopaluka means can get hurt. And it's true, because if you use root incorrectly, you can get hurt.
So to give everybody who hasn't listened to that episode yet some history here, I made up a word, literally just blot out something.
He just like let it fall out of his mouth.
And turns out that word actually meant something in another language, and it actually fit the topic we were talking about, which was root access. And it just shows the genius of my brain, Michael. Like unparalleled genius. Like even when I try to be stupid, it's genius.
Well, you're accidentally running into a good thing while trying to be stupid. Which
I'm not trying.
That's fine.
It comes natural. It's amazing. It just naturally comes out like that. We also have David that writes us and says, "Oh, lazy Michael."
What?
I like David already. David gets me and gets the show.
I don't so far.
You should try Graphene OS on a Pixel. No more Android privacy nightmares. Oh, just don't look into the iOS privacy nightmares with their on-device AI. So
there's a lot to talk about this comment.
That's a lot to unpack there.
First of all, I don't know if putting graphene makes it have no more privacy issues. I mean, it's still Android. Maybe it's a little better, sure. But I'll let Ryan talk about that, because I've only played with graphene a little bit. But the iOS privacy nightmares thing doesn't really make any sense to me, because first of all, it is on device, meaning it doesn't send it anywhere. And who cares if it's on my access, right? But also you can choose, it's by default, it's on device only. You have to choose to send it off, but you also have to choose to even have it working on your phone, which I do not. So the Apple Intelligence stuff doesn't even function on my phone. So I don't care if they have privacy issues with that particular feature that I don't use.
Yeah. So that's an interesting point, Michael, or thought. So let's break this down a little bit. They started with, did they start with the Apple?
They started with the Graphene OS thing.
Okay. So let's talk about Graphene OS. So Graphene OS by default, definitely more private Not saying security here because there's a big difference. I'm not saying it's not secure. I'm just saying we're focused on the word private that they used here, privacy, right? So if you're looking at privacy, definitely more private than stock Android. That's not hard to do in anything because stock Android is terrible for privacy. Probably one of the worst privacy invasive operating systems that's ever existed. And yes, that's comparing it to even Windows. I would rather use Windows than stock Android from a privacy standpoint. So when you look at Graphene OS, the way that it keeps itself so private is that it does not connect to Google services by default. However,
but you can choose to activate that.
There is, when you start to activate the Google Play services, there's a big pop-up warning that you have to read that says, hey, we do our best to try to keep your stuff private, but you're connecting to Google services and there's going to be data collected here. Doesn't say that exactly, but if you read it, that's really what the theme of that thing is. So I highly recommend, if you're going to use Android, definitely Graphene OS or something like that, EOS, are much better options. But do not kid yourself into thinking that just because you have that, you're automatically private, because now you've got other potential issues to worry about. In fact, all over the news this week, they're talking about an Android hack that's really righteous, as Bo would say, that has to do with sideloading apps, which a lot of people who utilize these alternative OSs go to these app stores and they're like, well, it's not Google Play Store, so I trust it more. But some of those apps in there are absolutely malware, viruses, and things that you have to check. So the point is, there's nothing truly fully private. That doesn't mean you don't do anything, but you also don't just assume because you're on Graphene OS that you're safe. Second, with the Apple piece, Apple does do a lot of processing on the phone itself. Now, there's the skepticism of that saying, do you really trust that Apple's keeping all that data? And there is some data that they're attaching even to the stuff that's processing on your phone to you personally that they're using to enhance their AI. The reason why I don't feel that Apple is particularly egregious in privacy invasion is because of how bad their AI is. If, in fact, they were stealing our data en masse, Siri would not be the pile of garbage that it is today, which is the absolute worst assistant out of every assistant that's out there on phones. So that gives me some faith that they're truly not stealing all of your data. Secondly, they do make it very clear, and I would say Apple has done from the big companies a much better job of being transparent of what they send and when. And they give you the option, as Michael said, of if you want to process it outside of your phone, it's going to ChatGPT. And they do make it clear that ChatGPT has different privacy policies. Although they state they have a deal with ChatGPT that they don't store them, we know that companies like OpenAI don't always follow the rules. So I think all in all, David makes some interesting points here, but don't throw rocks in a glass house, I think is the whole statement.
That's a good point. Don't throw rocks in a glass house, especially when that glass is even more brittle than you would imagine.
The sad thing is we really don't have a fantastic solution in the Android world. Even though Graphene OS and EOS are amazing, there's special focused people who are in this industry or in cybersecurity who know of their existence and know how to utilize them. But it's very difficult. Your average user is not going to go through that. Your average user is not going to use it. Your average user is not even going to know it exists. And so it's a very small niche group of people who utilize these alternative OSs. And until we get privacy to be for people to realize how important it is and what you're giving up without it, it's going to be hard to get people to put pressure on these companies to really change the way they act. Something terrible has to happen with people's privacy before they wake up. Unfortunately, those terrible things are actually already happening. Like, people don't know when you buy a brand new car and you're paying, $60,000 for a car like 6 years ago that we'd pay $30,000 for, that those cars have deals with insurance companies, a lot of big manufacturers now. And now you remember insurance would say, hey, if you put this device in your car, we'll lower your insurance. And you had the option of putting it in your car. Well, now they put it in by default. And so they have deals with insurance companies. You buy this brand new car. When you're signing your paperwork, you may not notice there's a page in there that says, there's a little box that's going to be sending all your data of how you drive to insurance companies, and your insurance rates are going up because of this type of stuff. But people don't care enough. And until they do, until it really hits their pocketbooks, we're going to keep seeing this type of crap.
So the more and more I hear about these kinds of things, the more and more sad I become.
Yes, it is very sad. So, David, I really appreciate you writing this and bringing this in.
So if you want to make us sad, go to destinationlinux.net/comments and send us some feedback.
If you want to make us sad. There you go.
Or go to destinationlinux.net/forum and you can make us sad on the forum. So there you go. Or make us happy. If you have some good news, actually, please send us some good news.
Yeah.
We have plenty of bad news to see. Send us some good news you found.
That's the challenge to the audience this week. You have to send us something happy. Think Jill.
Yeah.
What would Jill send in an email?
Exactly.
Something like that. It would just be giggle, 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 giggle. Love you guys, giggle. And Jill.
Yes.
Something like that. You know, there is hope though, Michael, because there's companies out there like Sandfly who protect us, protect our data. As Linux users, we know that security is non-negotiable, but with threats getting smarter, your security tools need to keep pace without dragging your system down. Traditional agents, they slow you down, leave blind spots, and it's time for a smarter approach. That's why Destination Linux is proud to be sponsored by Sandfly Security, a revolutionary agentless platform designed for Linux. It'd be nice to have Sandfly on mobile too.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
It really, that agentless idea is really a smart way to look at a phone device as well, because it could look for any anomalies happening within the device that would say, hey, that app you've got, there's something wrong with it because it's acting differently. And we'll send that over to Sandfly. Anyways, go to destinationlinux.net/Sandfly and see how Sandfly can transform your security strategy. Sandfly doesn't detect and respond, or just detect and respond. It revolutionizes security with SSH key tracking, password auditing, drift detection, covering threats from every angle, whether your systems are in the cloud, on-premise, embedded devices. Sandfly ensures they're all secure without the headache of an agent-based solution. Listen to what Celinda Lacombe from Tate Communications has to say. Sandfly addresses a serious security gap in the industry, intrusion detection on Linux platforms. The best part of Sandfly is its agentless nature, making it versatile application for any Linux environment. Experience security that's not just effective, but gives you peace of mind, no agents, no downtime, just cutting edge protection.
That's right. And also, by being a listener and part of the community for the Destination Linux podcast, you can get a discount. But on the home edition, you'll get 50% off by using the coupon code Destination50. So if you want to get the home edition for Sandfly Security and get a discount, well, you get it by being a part of this community, Destination50 at checkout. And of course, you can just dive into the future of Linux security right now at destinationlinux.net/Sandfly. That's destinationlinux.net/SANDFLY.
You know, Michael, when we went to the Sandfly booth at Red Hat Summit and we introduced ourselves, the first thing, because it wasn't with the typical folks we deal with at Sandfly, they sent other employees down there for the booth. And we introduced ourselves, they go, oh my gosh, you guys are the ones that have all those people who are downloading our home edition. You remember that?
Yes, exactly.
And so thank you to all of you who've gone there and checked out Sandfly. And we also have some videos that show some of the cool things that it does.
Oh, yeah.
But
absolutely. Check out Ryan's video from Red Hat Summit. We had a whole section just about Sandfly and all the cool stuff you can do with it. So check that out. We'll have that linked in the show notes.
All right, Jill, take us into Ubuntu sudo, but with a twist.
The sudo command is a common Linux shell command that lets you run apps, tools, and utilities with root or superuser security privileges. Sudo means superuser do on Linux and is probably the most famous of Linux commands. What Linux user hasn't heard of sudo? Well, we have a lot of new people in our audience who may not know that term.
Yep.
And there's even... maybe we have a few advanced users who have never used it before.
You just play it GUI?
I don't know.
It's possible, Michael.
I don't think so.
It's theoretically possible.
But she said advanced users.
Yeah, you may be advanced and just use a GUI. You're just a GUI. You're a GUI kitty.
I suppose it's possible. I guess it's possible. Okay.
What's neat about Linux these days that blows our minds is the fact that you can actually just stay in the GUI the entire time and accomplish
Yeah.
That's
everything.
true. I guess it's just like what I was just wondering, like the definition of advanced in that sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess you could be like a very high end, high tech savvy person, and you still just use the GUIs. I mean, you totally can these days for sure.
Yeah. So, well, there is actually big news regarding sudo for Ubuntu users. And with Ubuntu 25.10 questing Quokka,
Greatest code name ever.
which is coming out in October, actually will be using a Rust-based alternative, sudo-rs, for privileged escalation instead of the traditional sudo, which is written in C.
First of all, I hope you do not have to type out sudo rs or -rs. It's just sudo still.
Yeah.
But I haven't looked into this to see if like that's actually how it's going to be.
I guess you
Yeah.
could just
imagine.
do a
I imagine
alias.
too. Yeah.
I imagine it'll still be just sudo though, because if they're probably going to have to replace it anyway. So
Yeah. So sudo-rs is a memory safe version of sudo and su, which, aims to improve security and eliminate memory safety vulnerabilities. Some of the benefits of sudo-rs include a more modern code base, improved error handling, focus on long-term maintenance, and better security because of the use of Rust, which is a memory-safe language. It's one of the reasons why so many of the functions in the Linux kernel are going to be coming to us with Rust.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because it's been a little bit of a battle between the C and the Rust people that we've been covering, within the kernel itself.
there's been some drama.
A little bit of drama, which
Little
I think is natural, right? I mean, you've got some incredible coders of C, which is just a very, very impressive language and things you can do with it. And then you've got this kind of new wave of Rust people coming in, and you got to try to figure out like which parts are we going to replace with Rust and keep in C and not break stuff at the same time. I mean, Rust is really good because of the, not having the memory related errors and things like null pointer crashes or buffer overflows. And in fact, this week there is a bunch of news articles about a kind of overflow situation, allowing memory overflow in Linux issue, allowing for people to get hashed passwords. And so because of these type of things, Rust is a really impressive language to use because it has very strict rules about data protection and who owns data and who can see data and error handling and those type of things, making it very reliable. C is very good too. It's not like it's a bad language. It's just Rust is kind of, I think Rust fits a lot of what we want in Linux. When
Rust is more modern in the sense of like, the reason why it's memory safe in comparison to C is because C was made many, many decades ago. And that, when a new language, when languages come out, they can work on top of like what existed and be able to learn from it and that sort of stuff. And that's why Rust is better in that sense of the memory safety aspects. But just real quick, Ryan talked about the whole hash password memory core dump sort of thing. That is very difficult to do. I feel like we can't just kind of like glaze over that part.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, it's a thing that's happening, and you're going to see a lot of people like make articles about it because when something happens on Linux, they're always super excited to talk about the security issue in Linux, even though it is the barrier to use that thing is so high. It is almost guaranteed no one's going to have ability to do that.
It's already been patched too. So.
Yeah, and it's been patched and all that sort of stuff. So you will see people talking about it and overreacting and that sort of stuff. But whereas in comparison of Windows, it's literally every day, and it's just it's just a normal thing.
I talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
In fact, there are some really righteous hacks out there happening today on Windows and Mac OS that are very similar of stealing hashed information, so encrypted information. So I think what you're seeing too is a lot of governments are attacking each other. And what happens is you can only use these tools once before they're out in the open. And so you're seeing very sophisticated tools, likely because of AI and governments not getting along in their 5x5 sandbox with one shovel. And this is causing, when they use these attacks against each other, that hack is now out there in the wild. And then eventually it makes its way into hacker into groups and other things that utilize these tools. So you see these sophisticated hacks, and then they get patched once they're out there. I think the sad thing is a lot of these governments know there's some vulnerabilities in Windows, Mac OS, Android, whatever it is, and they don't report them so they can keep their little hidden, attack kit open.
I would be incredibly shocked if that wasn't the case.
Oh yeah, we know it's the case. It's actually several of these type of zero-day hacks that governments have used have been things where there was known vulnerabilities that they kept from software companies that they were supposedly partnered with that they knew existed but didn't tell them. And it kind of sucks because
they're partnered to get the information. Exactly. Yeah. But anyway, let's talk about Rust and sudo.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Jill. Rust and sudo. Happy news. Happy news.
Is it, though, because of the drama? What about all the rustification of the platform? And everybody's so mad about that. And then they're now sudo is being replaced with Rust. When is it going to end, people?
Yeah, you're right. Good point, Michael.
Well, Ubuntu.
I feel like I was channeling some drama there.
Definitely. Well, Ubuntu is kind of the first distro to really, take it on and include this. And sudo-rs is it's not expected to bring over all the features of sudo, as the developers are really kind of taking a less is more approach. But don't worry, classic sudo will be around for the foreseeable future. But sudo-rs will be the default. So I think all you will have to do is type sudo. But I'm not sure, because then what would they call the original sudo?
The classic.
Sudo C?
You have to type classic sudo. Thanks. Something like that.
Sudo classic, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, so it'll still be around, but I don't think it's going to be like installed. I feel like they're going to have it in their repos and you can switch to it if you want to. But I would imagine that they wouldn't change because of all the things to change. The mechanism to do something that is so fundamental to this, basically using the command line is.
You mean changing the command line itself to something different?
Yeah,
like it should be sudo vintage to launch the vintage version, and then sudo new,
sudo vintage, sudo legacy. I like that too.
Yeah.
Both those would be good. I like that. Sudo classic is that's not enough. We need to give more prestige to the C sudo.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like it was. There was definitely a learning curve when we moved over to apt instead of saying apt get install. It was apt install.
I still do apt get install. I still like
me too, because I just forget sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. This is a great point, because if they do change the command in the structure, that would be such a problematic thing because of the whole apt issue that you are talking about.
Yeah.
That happened in 2014.
Yeah.
It's when they switched over from apt get to apt.
That's when I was 12. Michael. I was 12 in 2014. That's crazy to think about. Wow.
Sure, buddy.
Sure.
Wow. Well, Michael and Ryan, here's a question. I think it's going to be interesting to see if Fedora, Debian, or OpenSUSE switch to sudo-rs soon for better security.
Who makes sudo-rs?
Who makes sudo-rs? Let's ask our AI chat.
Yeah.
Yes, AI chat, as in the live chat that we're on Twitch and YouTube. Do y'all know who makes sudo-rs?
Yeah,
that would be
AI
very
patron
helpful.
Room will tell us here.
Yeah, also the AI patron room for sure.
Because I know you can install it now.
Sudo old? Nope. Nobody's. Come on, sudo AI chat. Get better. You're like Siri over here. Where's our answer? Jeez.
No pressure or anything. We're asking you on the spot with zero warning.
Our
whatsoever.
Patrons are worse than Siri. This is unbelievable. Nothing's worse than Siri.
Nothing's worse than Siri.
So whether they will Fedora, Debian, OpenSUSE, will they switch? I think time will tell if there's some known, I don't know. I haven't seen anything about this until now. Is there any known issues, bugs? Are they doing it too early? Are all the commands covered? All of these things, if those are in check, I think Fedora probably would. Debian, no. Not for another 25 years. And OpenSUSE, yes. Pretty likely.
Well, I did find the GitHub, and it's put out by Trifecta Tech Foundation.
That sounds
Yeah.
like a hacking organization.
It kind
And
of
they
does.
show you how to install it in Ubuntu, Debian, and Fedora. DNF installs sudo-rs and arch pacman.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
TACS.
I don't have any,
Sudo.
I don't have any skin in this game. Like whatever you all experts decide to switch over to, I'm good with.
Yeah. So first of all, I think that we can't really find the answer because it's not quickly accessible. But we do know that if these distributions are going to be switching to it, it's going to be probably because that they are functionally working well. Maybe in the sense of Ubuntu, they might be testing it. If they release it with the next LTS, that will be a very strong sign that they're committed to it. But if it's just this one testing period, because that's what Ubuntu does, is they'll do something. Because if you don't know, the interim releases only have 9 months of support, so they really use it. Like a lot of the times, they're using it for testing to see if it's if they try something and if it works out really well, they'll keep it going, and if it doesn't work, they'll chop it off right before they do the LTS.
I can't think of, Tyler in our patron room makes a good point. Like, I can't think of a time where Ubuntu really did some like cutting edge testing thing. That's usually like Fedora that does that, not Ubuntu. So they obviously feel like it's very stable. I mean, because Ubuntu is known for, being a little bit more.
But I mean, they have
stuff.
tested things before in the sense of like they did Wayland GNOME back in 2017. For a one release to test to see if it was good, and then they dropped it, but right before the LTS.
So never mind, it won't work.
Yeah.
So it's quite possible that they are doing this as a test. We don't know for sure because there's not enough information about that. But I do think it's interesting, and also for those who are new to Linux and you're just learning about what sudo is, I did make a video about the five commands that every Linux user should know, and in that video, sudo is in there. So that might be something to check out.
So you can't know until you watch his video, and
you can't know what the other ones
understand what he's talking about unless you hit the thumbs up. And if you want to hold on to the information for more than 30 days, you have to become a patron. That's how it works.
And to do that, all you can do is tuxedo.com/membership, and you become a patron. And that way you can like keep the information in your head. Otherwise, it just kind of has a memory leak because it's not based on Rust.
Buffer overflow.
Exactly.
All right. So speaking of new things, normally we don't really cover a lot of like VirtualBox releases. It's not really a hot topic.
Have we ever covered VirtualBox?
We probably never covered a VirtualBox release, but times are a-changing, Michael. You got to keep up with the times, and the people demand more VirtualBox coverage.
I don't think anyone has ever asked for this. So what are we talking about here?
All right, so this week,
although VirtualBox is important because it does make it easy for people to get started with virtual machines and that sort of stuff. So we're not really bashing it. It's just not something you typically would talk about.
It seems like you are bashing. It seems like you're a VirtualBox hater. And you know what?
No. Here's the thing. I don't hate VirtualBox. I'm not a big fan of Oracle, but that's a different topic.
Oh, Ryan has a very important reason, though. So.
Yeah, I had a personal experience with VirtualBox that makes it something why I wanted to bring it to our audience. First, let's start because we do have a lot of new listeners. Like, it's been crazy the last few months, Michael, like the amount of new people who are listening to this show.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't expect that. Thank you. Welcome. And we also got some feedback that we need to also cover some stuff from the basics because there's a lot of our new audience that are former Windows users that are wanting to come to Linux, which is
welcome.
Really awesome.
Welcome to the wonderful garden.
I feel like PewDiePie had a big part in this too.
I think it's mostly us. But probably
not his million subscribers, just that.
I mean, just because we have we have 25,000 for the show and he has 110 million, that doesn't really make much difference, right? Does it?
We've got hundreds of thousands of podcast listeners, so that's
true. Overall, we have a pretty large. We're pretty important. We actually seriously, we have grown quite a bit. There's been like 10,000 new subscribers in this past month, so. It's pretty cool. So thank you for everybody who's joining the community, and feel free to send your comments to us. We always want to get feedback, but there's a lot of cool feedback. We are getting all sorts of stuff,
but not VirtualBox feedback.
But not VirtualBox stuff. It could be depending on this particular.
That's why you may notice that we're covering when we're covering these topics. We're trying to also cover some explanations of what they are. And I know for the experienced listeners, you're like, why are you telling us what VirtualBox is? We know what VirtualBox is. Well, we're trying to help out some of the new folks. So let's start with the fact VirtualBox is mostly open source. Mostly, I say, because its core is open source, but all of the extension packs and stuff are not necessarily open source. So mostly open source. There all are alternatives for this, like KVM, QEMU, UTM, Parallels, VMware, Hyper-V. There's so many alternatives for this type of
GNOME
thing.
Boxes is another
Boxes
one.
is one of my
Yeah,
favorites.
Boxes is awesome too. I like Boxes.
Virt Manager is another one.
But VirtualBox, I would argue, is one of the best known across all operating systems. So people who are on Windows, Mac, Linux, VirtualBox is one that probably pops up very frequently.
It's one of the most known that's not like commercial. Like it's definitely the most known that's open source. It's been around for a very long time when Sun started them. And that's why Oracle bought it. And anyway,
it allows you to run virtual machines. We should probably say that.
Yes, it does.
So if you want to run Windows, but you want to also run Linux in a virtual machine without having your whole operating system change over, you want to test Linux installs, whatever, you can use VirtualBox. If you're in Linux, you can use VirtualBox to test out other Linux distros.
Or better yet, if you do the reverse of doing the Windows inside the virtual machine.
Exactly.
Because I actually used to do this for a very long time. When I first switched over to Linux, I'm a graphic designer, so I'm still in graphic design, but I was doing graphic design in Photoshop on Linux through a Windows VM. Because that part is necessary, because Photoshop has always been a little bit... Adobe is not the most friendly company, even to their customers.
That was until you found Photopea.
That was until I found Photopea. I use Photopea now, but for a very long time, over a decade, I used virtual machine of... actually, it was VirtualBox, but I used a VM of Windows to be able to run Photoshop. And
from within Linux.
Yeah. So I was 99% Linux, and Ryan would always give me a hard time about but not 100%.
Yeah.
So
let's in some shows.
Thank you, Photopea, first of all. Yeah. Luckily, we've got past that problem.
Well, VirtualBox has a new version, 7.1.10, which has support for Linux kernels 6.15 and 6.16. It also has revamped UI and improvements for ARM virtualization.
Oh, that's
cool. This becomes important to the rest of the story.
Oh, now we know why we're talking about. Okay, gotcha.
So here I am. You guys know I'm in college for cybersecurity, about 70% complete. It's been a great journey. I get to pick an elective. And one of the elective choices I get is Linux and operating systems. And I'm like, of course I'm going to pick that as my elective.
That is the easiest elective you could possibly have.
This is going to be so simple of a class to get through for me. That's awesome. Now, I joined the class, and imagine my surprise when the professor's like, hey, know your show? I actually submitted my first paper, and they're like, hey, know your show, really enjoy it. And I know you were at the Red Hat Summit because we watched the show. So that was fun.
That's fun. So that's probably really good for you or really bad for you.
Yeah.
If they listen to the show and then you say something really ridiculous like Dopa Luca or something, and it might be like, does this guy really know what he's talking about?
Fourth professor in my college that has known this show, and I think it's like it's a little bit of a cheat code for me here.
It could be. It could be.
Yeah.
But the first assignment was a really daunting one, Michael. It was install Linux. And you have to prove you installed Linux and write a paper on why you're choosing which distro and what
So
system.
you, of course, chose Slackware.
What's that? Slackware? No, Arch, of course. I went with Arch. So I was like, well, I can't do something too simple because they kind of know the show, right? And I got back from...
you're putting yourself on a higher
I'm putting myself
platform.
on this pedestal that I shouldn't.
No,
right?
I mean in the sense of not pedestal as in sense you're talking yourself being good. I'm talking about you're putting yourself at that you're giving yourself expectation and obligation that they have for you when they might just be like, hey, this is part of the system. You just do whatever you want. And
we watch the show. We know you're an idiot. Just do a simple Ubuntu install. They could. Done.
I mean, if they watch it, they clearly know that. Yes.
So,
no, Ryan, you should be making your own distro with Linux from scratch. That's what
I should have done, because that would have really impressed them.
And they would have asked you, why didn't you spend a week and a half on this?
All my machines already have Linux on it. So it was kind of like one of those things where they were really talking about VMs in the class for people to start with, and it makes sense because they don't want a bunch of people wiping their machines on accident or whatever. So I was like, I'm going to do something in a VM. And you know what? I'm going to use the MacBook Air M4, and I'm going to put Linux in utilize UTM as the base as the virtualization software to install. And in the UTM, it has a library of distros you can choose. And one of those was Fedora 38. And so when you click that image, though, it's already installed for you through the UTM gallery. So that didn't work because, again, you have to do screenshots and things within the paper of showing your installation and prompts and things. So I need to install from scratch. So I was like, well, I'll just download Fedora 42 and I'll put it in UTM. And I'll use the same virtualization for video and other things and get this running. Now, as you guys know, I work full time. Plus, we have a podcast network we run. Plus, I go to college. So
he has tons of time to do all that.
So I generally do my classes at night, late at night. So now I'm going through this install with UTM, and I get Fedora 42 installed after I did the gallery one and realized it's not going to work. Download Fedora 42, go to do the install, and everything works. I get through all the installation screens, do my screenshots, and boom, no display. Get this no display error when it reboots, and it will not work. So I switched to there's like 15 different display options you can choose. I switched to all those. It doesn't work. I start going through support forums and things and find that eventually there's a bug in UTM with the latest Fedora and with the display thing. And here are these workarounds you can try. Tried all the workarounds. Now we're like an hour in for this simple class of installing Linux, okay, which I can do with my eyes closed. I do it 20 minutes before shows. I'll distro hop and be successful.
It's true. Well,
for this class, I'm failing. It is now 11:30 at night, right? I've got work the next day. I've got to get this paper written. So I go download VirtualBox, and I'm like,
VirtualBox.
Please boot. Just please work. And so I take the ISO, throw it in VirtualBox, install it. It boots. It works. No display error. No having to play with different configurations. It's just there. So really appreciate this new version of VirtualBox and the fact that they so sometimes these releases sound really simple and not interesting, but in my case, that was a very important fix that they have in place.
And also VirtualBox, sometimes distributions have like some kind of kernel packages for the live ISO that has like the VBox stuff, so it's automatically detecting that it's coming and going into a VirtualBox. So they come with packages for that, and that might not be true for the other tools. So like that's very cool in the sense of like being able to detect that sort of stuff and have a better experience. Because I can't remember the last time I ran VirtualBox and it didn't work to any degree that was like
it's true,
not easily overcome. Like I've had issues obviously, but in the sense of most of the time, you don't really have to deal with it in any huge degree. Maybe you have to change a checkbox in the settings for a particular feature to work or something like that. But for the most part, it's not that hard.
It's interesting you say that because UTM has been kind of a mixed bag. Sometimes it works really well and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes it really works really well. And then you try the virtual machine a few weeks later and it stops working really well. I've had a lot of issues, honestly, with UTM, but a lot of people recommend it for Mac, but it hasn't been the greatest experience with stability in comparison. Now, I have also played with Parallels and VMware and a lot with KVM, but that's in Linux, so that's different because everything's stable in Linux. But Parallels and VMware do a pretty good job as well with the stability piece of it. But VirtualBox always works, and you don't have to pay for it, and it was there. And so there you go. That's my story. And next time I will not get creative and not touch the Mac and just install it on a regular dang computer that already has Linux on it, like all my computers do, and just reinstall the stupid thing and be done. I learned my lesson.
It's like, ARM feature, I'm going to try this out, even though I don't have to, and there is no reason for it. And I could solve this problem in 15 minutes and be completely done with this lesson. Now he's learned another lesson.
Yes. Yeah. Don't overcomplicate things. Keep it simple.
Don't do the shoe on head thing, Ryan. Don't do the shoe on head
Coming
thing.
From you, that's priceless because you are Mr. Shoe on Head themselves. So that's
for those who are new to the show, that's a running gag in the sense that he says that I do things too complicated. It's like, where do I put the shoe on your head? Even though that doesn't make any sense. However, I'm happy to report that's Ryan now.
Yeah. Well, there's another lesson here. There's an important life hack here. Anytime you taunt the universe smacks you down like the bug you are. And here I was when I took the class, bragging to my wife and friends that I'm taking a Linux and operating system course. And they're like, oh, it's going to be so easy for you. I'm like, I know, right? And then I'm up till midnight installing Linux like a noob.
The
very first assignment. Yeah. Like unbelievable. The universe smacked me down.
Great. I mean, it's a good story, and I appreciate it. I mean, I'm happy this happened to you because we got a good story for the show.
Yeah,
but also, you've learned a valuable lesson.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that.
Yes.
Yeah, and VirtualBox has really improved. In fact, its update cadence is much better now than it used to be. It used to be you had to wait a while before you could use the latest and greatest kernel, and now they're really on top of it.
That's true. There used to be like a month period between the new kernel release and the new release of VirtualBox, but now it's actually been quite good these days. Like, I don't like the fact that the USB stuff is inside that little extension pack, but I mean,
yeah.
Can't really complain about, get everything perfect, I guess.
You can't look a gift goat in the mouth, A
gift goat, yeah. I wouldn't say VirtualBox is the goat. What would be the goat virtual machine tool?
KVM.
KVM, probably. Yeah, KVM.
KVM is the goat.
Yeah, Virt Manager plus KVM. Yeah.
VMware is pretty good too because it's always from the beginning.
It was good.
Yeah.
Now you guys are confusing people. We had decided KVM is the goat. Then Jill comes in and says,
well, she's also in like the nostalgic version of VMware. When VMware used to be good and it was its own company and they cared about their customers, and that is not VMware now because they were bought by Broadcom and they decided to get rid of everybody. I actually talked to some people at the Red Hat Summit, and we were in the line waiting for the backpack, which, by the way, very long line for the backpack. But there was still a good backpack, by the way. Just it's fine, but. In that line, I was talking to them about it, and this one guy said that they were there to learn about some virtualization features and stuff in RHEL, and then someone mentioned like, "Hey, have you heard about the latest issue with VMware Broadcom?" And I'm like, no, they're apparently sending cease and desist letters to people who have perpetual licenses of VMware, and that seems like a good idea.
Yeah. Well, from the olden days, what I'm thinking is that VMware was one of the first virtual machines that supported discrete GPUs and drivers and acceleration,
right?
Using Linux, and
the
that was the big
history of VMware
deal.
Is good.
Yeah, that was a big deal. I mean, I could run Skyrim, on a Windows virtual machine on Linux. So they were the first to do the GPU acceleration. And VirtualBox was an early adopter of that as well. And theirs has gotten better and better over the years. Definitely.
And they still are open source.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, VMware was never open source, but it's
no.
At least VirtualBox is still like actually committed to being a good product.
Yeah.
You know what I want to do? I want payback for that little comment, Michael. Oh, you learned a lesson, blah, 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 blah. The next news topic you're covering, payback. You're going to cover something about Arch. Do it.
Oh, man.
Yeah, here we go.
Talk about your love of Arch. It's so good.
Okay, fair enough. For those who are new to the show and don't know, Ryan is an Arch fan, and I am a person who is also appreciative of Arch, but also likes to point out that Arch is not for beginners, and the amount of people who talk about it being for beginners is just unfortunate because it is great.
Are you a good beginner or are you a lame-o beginner? Are you a lame-o supremo beginner? Then you can't use Arch. If you're a cool beginner, you can use Arch.
Ryan is joking. Just to be clear.
Am I?
Are you?
Yes, I'm joking.
Okay,
yes.
Good. Just to make sure.
Use Linux from scratch as your first distro if you really want to learn Linux.
I mean, if you want to torture yourself, that's a great option.
If you hate yourself.
Yeah. Linux from scratch is awesm, by the way. I'm not saying it's just not for beginners. It's also not for most people. It's for people who want to learn how a distro is built. Actually built from the ground up. If you want to learn that and you have a week to 2 weeks, maybe a month to do it, then that's a great option.
You have a month of PTO with nothing else to do.
Yes.
Do Linux from scratch. on the beach.
The funny thing is that the more and more you do a certain installation, like if Ryan were to try this again on the VirtualBox, and he could probably he'd do that lesson much faster now that he's
Obviously,
gone. Yeah. But that's true for all of the distributions, except for Linux from scratch. It will still take forever. It doesn't matter how fast you do
never
it.
get better at it.
It will just take forever no matter what, because of all the processing and the compiling and everything. Like even Gentoo is a lot faster these days, and once you get used to it and stuff, it still takes like a day or so, but it's a minimum like a week for Linux from scratch. Anyway, let's talk about Arch Linux. That's the whole point you're trying to make me talk about.
Yeah.
So Arch Linux is exploring a formal sponsorship process to support its growth, which is a good thing to hear. A new proposal aims to establish transparent guidelines for accepting financial contributions while preserving the project's independence and values. This move reflects increasing interest from organizations and contributors in sustaining Arch's role in the Linux ecosystem.
Valve.
Yeah, I was just thinking of Valve.
They don't mention that in the news, but yeah, it's Valve, because Valve themselves announced that they wanted to do stuff
Which
for
is
or
awesome.
donate for Arch.
Freaking awesome, right?
Yes.
Like Valve is huge, and their sponsorship could mean a lot to Arch. In fact, their partnership has already meant a lot. They've been working together on several things that have helped improve by proxy things within Arch, because SteamOS is Arch based. Michael?
Yeah, technically speaking, yes, absolutely. This is a problem with things
Don't
based on
technically
Arch.
speak. It just is. And let it go and move on.
It is, but when people say that something is Arch based and it's super easy to use, and then they go, well, does that mean Arch is super? No. There's a reason they picked Arch, is because it lets them, like, there is no opinion in Arch. Like the way that Debian has no opinion, Arch is similar, except Arch just moves faster. So if you want a distribution base that doesn't do anything out of the box for you and doesn't make any decisions for you, and you want everything decided for you by yourself, that's what Arch gets.
That's right, because Arch users aren't sheeple. We're wolves. Grr.
Grr. That was, anyway, people, Ubuntu or something based on Ubuntu is perfectly fine to get started with. In fact, that's what I recommend. But anyway, let's talk about Arch. We're still talking about Arch, okay? We haven't abandoned the Arch topic yet, right? So you're still winning this battle right now.
Okay, cool.
But this is kind of interesting, because I'm curious how they're going to be handling this, because Arch used to be related to, connected to the SPI, the software in the public interest. I'm not sure, are they transitioning away from the SPI or that kind of thing? Because that would be interesting to know. But accepting donations is a really cool thing for them to do. But also, a lot of people don't really recognize how, like, if you see a project like, hey, why don't you let me donate to you and, help do like some kind of bug funding to get something fixed or whatever. The reason is because it's very complicated. Yeah. It complicates everything. There's like legal burdens, there's taxes you have to deal with, because once you start accepting donations, you're introducing a new style of taxes. Like you become like, depending on where you're from and what country you live in, there could be like self-employment tax being attached to it and all sorts of stuff. It's a complicated thing. So making a formal process is a fantastic thing to hear about, because they're working on making all of that make sense, while also being able to get all the donations and everything.
Well, they're doing it in a really cool way, because they're wanting every sponsorship to be publicly documented. Because there's also the problem of, you talked about the government issues and taxes, and you're right, that's 100%. That's 99.99% of the problem. And then the other problem is people start getting weird when you get sponsorships, right? They start questioning, are you being bought by them? Are you focusing all your attention on just their stuff and no longer what you used to?
That's true.
They start putting some ill intentions that they reflect on you. And because of past experiences, probably with companies that have done shady things,
Yeah. I hate it when people say, like, just because this one company is sponsoring this project, that means it's bad or whatever. When there are certain examples where a company could be that, and it wouldn't be happy to see it being a project. But there are a lot of times where it's just they use the software and they're giving back to the software, which is what we tell people to do as, like, big corporations taking advantage of open source and using these projects. They should give money back to those projects for that reason, to keep those projects existing. But if there's a catch-22 where people don't want those companies to be doing that, which way do you go?
Yeah. I mean, our show wouldn't exist without the patrons and sponsors.
Right. And earlier, Ryan talked about being weird from all the sponsor stuff. Exactly. He got really weird.
Yeah. And the whole sponsor thing is interesting because we have a lot of people, especially with the growth of the show and things, that come to us that want us to buy ad spots. And the ad spots allow us to pay for the servers, allow us to pay for all the email, all the stuff that goes in, all the business taxes, lawyers you have to have,
media production, editing, processing.
Oh my gosh, there's so much that goes into it. So sponsors are very important. Patrons are very important to it. But we have to turn away a lot of these sponsors. A lot of them are VPNs because we know if we mess up and we bring something on here that's not tried and true, you'll never listen to us again. So we find things like Bitwarden and Sandfly and all of these cool companies that we've brought here. But that also puts us in a pickle because we need money. No, because you want to keep the business running. You want to keep things funded.
He's joking, but
it's true.
Need money.
We need money. No, but what's interesting about it is when you do things publicly like this, what Arch is doing is technically they could keep all this hidden, right? Just say we're accepting sponsorships. But then people are going to be really curious, like who's out there sponsoring you?
That's true.
And what kind of money are they utilizing? And what are they So making it public is really important. I think Arch did the right thing. Because the trust, at the end of the day, the point I was making with this show is it's about trust with the audience that we have to build. And so we have to vet the people who we bring onto the show as sponsors. And Arch is doing that with their sponsorship here, I think, and making sure that they don't have external influences that are impacting their decisions and what they do with their distro. So I applaud Arch for the two things. One is going for sponsorships because I want Arch to be around forever, and you need money to be around forever and bring in the talent, but also doing it so publicly so that people can really make sure that it's, staying above water.
Exactly. It needs to be sustainable, but also, I like the sustainable and transparent approach. It's very good that they're doing that. And also, we are very transparent about it because if someone sponsors us, we literally tell you about it every time we do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I have a feeling Arch will probably use something like Open Collective. That's a good place to start.
Yeah.
It's a good way to do
Valve
it.
could solve for us is the problem of getting money to all of the different projects. We've talked about that before, all the different open source projects, a lot of the stuff that's behind the scenes. Maybe Valve could create some type of system to allow us to donate and get
it's interesting.
To those.
First of all, but before we go into that, another thing they could help Valve could help us with is sponsoring us. Valve, would you like to?
Oh, yes.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, that'd be
Lord
awesome.
Gaben, we'd love you for that.
And Ryan will agree to put the brain chip in and everything.
Yeah,
I will. For the right sponsorship price, you know what? Sign me up.
Who knows?
What could we lose?
Exactly. But real quick, I do think that'd be a cool idea. But I think the other thing is that the complication of that, because the SPI is kind of that in a way. So there are a lot of projects like Debian is part of SPI. Actually, I think SPI started because of Debian. Like Debian wanted to have something like this, and then they started this, and then a bunch of other projects jumped on, and that's pretty cool. But I think that'd be some kind of solution. It may be not creating a organization or a project or whatever that does that sort of thing, but someone creating like a framework explaining like how everything can be working and how it will make sense, how to be transparent, how to do all this stuff. Like if Arch were able to like just provide how they did everything, that'd be very cool too.
Oh yeah, for other distros and stuff to pick up. Yeah,
exactly.
Because it looks like they're really doing it in a very above water way. And the way you do things above water is you have some land and then you add water to it and then you float on top. And now you're above
such
water.
A terrible but also fantastic segue. Continue.
Thank you. So our software spotlight this week is add water.
Yes.
Oh, really? Shocking.
Yeah, that's so good. That segue was incredible.
It was good.
People should sponsor us just for that segue. Right
exactly.
There.
What's funny is that no one knew what the segue was going because we knew what the next topic was, but it just seemed like, why are you talking about water so much?
What is his problem?
Are we bringing up the Sea Monkey project again?
Oh my
Yes.
gosh, sea monkeys. I'm surprised we haven't got more email
All you
about
need
the
to
sea
do
monkeys.
is add water to the sea.
Man, that would have been a good transition there too.
It would have been.
But add water is, about theming. And theming is very important to most people. Not me, but most people really
Definitely
care
not Ryan.
about theming. I remember Rocco on this show used to be mad when he was covering a distro if like a pixel was off in the window on the left corner of the window and it didn't match the other pixel.
To be fair to Rocco, that was not exactly what happened. He was annoyed by 4 pixels.
Yeah.
It was 4 pixels off, and that was the problem.
Yeah. Me, I'm a little more forgiving. If you're a theme junkie and you want everything in place and to look perfect, then you're going to want to check out this app, Add Water. It is a utility app that's super easy to install that basically takes Firefox GNOME theme and makes them merge together so that they're themed together, I guess.
Yeah,
so
it basically makes
and GNOME.
Firefox look better on a GNOME desktop.
There
So
you
if
go.
you're using Ubuntu or using Fedora Workstation or you're using the GNOME version of OpenSUSE or whatever, that makes it look better with the libadwaita style and stuff like that, which admittedly Firefox does kind of look out of place at times depending on the distribution and the desktop.
Never noticed.
I mean, of course, for those who don't understand what Ryan is saying here, is that one of my favorite stories to tell, and if you're new to the show, you might not have heard it before. One time I went to Ryan's house, and I was always into theming and customizing and stuff like that, just because I want things to look good, right? So I get to Ryan's house, and I'm like, hey, I need to use your computer to set up for the stream. He's like, okay, great. Here, I'll set it up for you, blah, blah. Opens it. It's vanilla XFCE on Arch. For those who don't know, vanilla XFCE feels like it hasn't been touched since the 90s, visually speaking, and it probably hasn't. At the time, it definitely hasn't. Maybe now they've done some improvements here and there.
Yeah,
I know
they did a lot of improvements since that time period. But this was back before XFCE had done an overhaul. Yeah.
Yeah, this was like 2019, I think, something like that.
It looked so good. It looked like an AOL interface, like the good old days.
That's being nice to AOL, I guess. But this is it's an interesting thing because with Firefox, there are times where it does feel a little bit not seamless with the experience. Because if you look at Firefox on Windows and Firefox on Mac, they are seamlessly integrated and they look nice. But if you put it into Linux, it depends on the distribution and this desktop, whether they're going to have these things optimized. Some do, they put in the effort to make it look great on whatever desktop they're using, and some don't. So I think this is actually really good because, for one, it's basically just a Flatpak you install to activate it, and that's very cool. Does it require the Firefox Flatpak to work?
I don't know because I didn't use it because I don't theme. But it does support light and dark style as well as accent colors. You can hide the tab bar.
Which are very important things for Ryan. He really cares about this stuff.
Use an OLED-friendly pitch black for the interface. Customize tab bar positions, controls, alignment. Hide redundant microphone, webcam, screen share indicators. And it supports Flatpak, Snap, LibreWolf, and Florp variants of Firefox as well. So if you're not using regular Firefox, but a variant of it.
I would imagine since it works on Flatpak and Snaps, it doesn't require you to use the Flatpak. So there's that. But it doesn't specify whether it works on the traditional packages, which would be interesting. But
here's an easier way. I mean, use this if you want. But I can tell you from my experience in Linux, which is vast, that if you have a Batman wallpaper, everything fits in with your theme. So just get a Batman wallpaper and you're set.
For reference, for those who don't know, literally every time I've seen a wallpaper for Ryan, it has been Batman. And this is forever. I mean, I don't think he's ever not had that.
The greatest character of all comics. So
it's hard to argue with that. I mean, I would not normally, but we don't have a comic book show. Maybe in the future.
In the future, we'll go. Yeah.
But also, I think it's kind of funny that this tool is called Add Water because you don't really want to put water on fire. So the Firefox, that might,
WaterFox, though. WaterFox, you would.
Does it support? It doesn't specify WaterFox, though.
It doesn't say WaterFox, but it would make more sense if it was WaterFox, you know?
Yeah. I think
Otherwise, it should be
we're
Fire.
overanalyzing this at this point.
Probably. Well, a big thank you to each and every one of you for supporting us by watching or listening to Destination Linux, and all the new listeners out there. We love your faces. And you can come join us on Discord. Go to tuxdigital.com/Discord. In fact, when you become a patron, then you can join the Discord room and you can do all kinds of cool stuff like listen to the show live, interact with us live. You could be our AI and prove that our patron AI is better than Siri. It didn't happen this week, but usually that is what happens.
It usually does. And they did respond after the fact, but now... but you can become a patron by going to tuxdigital.com/membership. You get a bunch of cool perks. We've been testing live streaming the show, but we're doing an audio only live streaming for like YouTube and Twitch. And we're doing if you want the video version live stream, you can do that by becoming a patron, tuxdigital.com/membership. But you can also get a bunch of other stuff like unedited episodes of the show. So if there's ever a time where we mess up or something, then that will be there. But also there's extra bonuses because before we start the show and after we finish the show, there's even more content that the patrons get that everybody else doesn't.
Man.
What that could be? I don't know, but it's awesome. Not enough to put on the show, but it's awesome. So go to tuxdigital.com/membership to get all of that and more, including discounts for our store.
So
that rhymed on purpose. You're welcome. tuxdigital.com/store to get a bunch of cool stuff. We have hats, mugs, hoodies, and nothing that Ryan holds up ever. I don't think he's ever held up anything that is remotely on the store.
We don't have wireless blood freeze sensors or motion detectors or Lexar USB in our store.
The USB drive could be something to think about in the future, but the other stuff, I mean, it's better than the random Rocktopus that you held up before. So
how dare you insult the Rocktopus? First of all, the Rock is my twin brother. For people who don't know, you're new to the show. Rock is my twin brother. We hang out sometimes.
Yeah.
I like to believe we do. And
sure.
I printed this out in his honor. It's a Rocktopus.
Aw.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we could have this in the store, a kawaii strawberry-shaped sipper cup.
That is so cute, Jill. It's so cute. My teeth are rotting, just looking at it.
Well, those are not in the store. But
yes. And make sure to check out all the amazing shows here on Tux Digital. That's right. Yes, we have an entire network of shows to fill your whole week with geeky goodness. Head to tuxdigital.com to keep those Linux penguins marching.
Jill, you're hosting this week, so guess what? You get to close us out. I know Michael kept you from hosting for months, but I brought it back. I never forget anything. Yeah. So Jill, close us out with the greatest closing this show has ever had. No pressure.
Everybody, have a great week. And remember that the journey itself is just as important as the destination on this Firefly starship.
Good job, Jill. Good job.
Yes.
Yeah. That's true. See ya.